Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I send greetings and best wishes to everyone, and I hope that everybody in these very difficult and critical times is keeping well, peaceful, and content. I want to offer for a few minutes some reflections on how to respond to the coronavirus crisis. And the first thing that has to be stated is that we should be very, very diligent and scrupulous in observing the advice given to us by the medical professionals. They have our best interest in mind. And even though some of the advice they give might be difficult to follow, but in order to prevent the spread of the virus, we have to adhere very diligently, very conscientiously to their words of advice. The virus can spread very rapidly and very widely if we are careless. But if we are careful and diligent, then we can gradually flatten the curve of the virus. That means instead of the virus increasing sharply like this, the virus will increase gradually and slowly, and then the expansion rate of the virus will flatten off and hopefully will drop until the virus vanishes. The virus spreads not in a linear progression, but it spreads virally, that is exponentially. From one person, it could spread to 3, from 3 to 9, from 9 to 27, and so on. And so we have to follow the advice of the medical professionals in order to curb, to stop the spread of the virus. And some of the main points that the medical professionals teach us, the first is what is called social distancing, which means that we have to keep a physical distance from other people. The natural tendency of the human mind is for people to mix together, to come close together, to shake hands when we meet, to hug, to speak together intimately, to gather together in groups. But if we act in that way, then we're going to become agents for picking up the virus ourselves and spreading it to others. And so to avoid that, we have to observe social distancing, to keep a distance from others, not to join in group activities, not to go out to the public domain, but to remain, to the best of our ability, to remain at home, to remain in our room. The second principle, which is taught by the medical professionals, is to frequently wash one's hands and to wash them with soap. The reason we have to use soap is because soap breaks up and destroys the virus. Just washing with water is not sufficient. So use soap and rub the hands together to create a lather and rub them for about 20 seconds before rinsing off the hands. So in following the advice of the professionals, the medical professionals, we're taking care firstly of ourselves, but by taking care of ourselves, we're also taking care of others. We are protecting ourselves from picking up the virus, and by avoiding the virus ourselves, we protect others because we don't become a channel, a vector for spreading the virus to others. So it might seem that taking care of ourselves is an act of selfishness, but actually this is a true act of compassion, a way to protect others. And there's a sutta spoken by the Buddha which illustrates this. In this sutta, it occurs in the Satipatthana Samyutta. The Buddha relates a story of 2 acrobats who come to a town. One is the master, the other is the disciple. And so they come to the town and they set up the pole, the acrobatic pole, And then the master says to his disciple, climb on my shoulders. The disciple climbs up on his shoulders. Then the master says, you protect me and I will protect you. And in that way, protecting each other, we can perform our feats. You'll get down safely from the pole and we'll make some money. But the disciple says to the master, Master, that's not the right way to do it. Rather, you protect yourself. I will protect myself. And when we are each protecting ourselves, then we will be safe and secure. In that way, we can perform our feats, all get down safely, and we will make our living. And then the Buddha said, the advice given by the disciple, that is the correct way to perform the acrobatic feat. And so the Buddha, applying this to our everyday life, he says, in the same way, protect yourself, and by protecting yourself, you'll also protect others. And by protecting others, you'll also protect yourself. And so by taking care of ourselves properly, we'll protect our family, members of our community, members of our city or town, and people throughout the country. Now, when we face this virus, face this epidemic, many people get overcome by fear, by worry, even by anxiety, even by a mood of panic. So how are we going to deal with this crisis in terms of the Dhamma? How are we going to apply the Dharma to help us overcome our fear, our worry, our concern, and live in peace and equanimity? I want to mention 3 different approaches. Each approach will be more appropriate for people of a different temperament. One approach is based on faith and devotion, another approach on mindfulness and concentration or samadhi, and the third approach is based on wisdom and insight. Of course, all 3 factors should be interwoven, faith, mindfulness, and wisdom, but different people will place emphasis on different approaches. So for those who incline to faith and devotion, a way to keep the mind strong, calm, and joyful is to call to mind the excellent qualities, the virtues of the objects of our faith. That is the 3 jewels, the triple gem. So we call to mind the Buddha as the all-enlightened one, the perfectly enlightened one, of boundless wisdom and great compassion. We call to mind the Dharma as the path of practice, the way that leads to liberation and enlightenment. And we call to mind the Sangha. This can be the community of the liberated arahats or the community of the pure, compassionate bodhisattvas. We bring them to mind and think of their purity, their wisdom, their compassion, their practice, and their vows. And so when we let the mind dwell on the 3 jewels, and you could choose any of the jewels that you prefer, Buddha, Dharma, or Sangha, this will give rise to a feeling, an inner feeling of trust, of confidence, of quiet joy, and of inner strength, which will help us keep calm and peaceful in this time of crisis. The second approach emphasizes mindfulness, leading to greater inner calm and concentration. So at this approach, we sit down in a meditation seat and we set up mindfulness. First, the mindfulness of the whole body, feeling the body as a whole. You can scan the body and feel the sensations of the body. You can feel the touch of your buttocks against the seat, the legs on the ground or the feet on the ground. And then you can turn your attention to the breath and be mindful when breathing in, be mindful of the in-breath. When breathing out, be mindful of the out-breath. And when thoughts arise, thoughts of worry, thoughts of fear, thoughts of planning, thoughts of anger, thoughts of resentment, whatever thoughts arise, you can just briefly note that thought. Let the thought come, let it go, drop the thought, and bring the mind back to the main object, coming back to the feeling of the body, and then moving from the body back to the breath. And if any of these feelings of fear, worry, anxiety become very strong, then you can drop the breath and just focus on the thought itself, turning the thought into an object. Or you can focus on the sensations in the body as that thought is running through the mind, feeling the tightness, the clenching, the tension in the body. And then using your mind, you can relax the tension of the body. And when you feel ready, then you can bring the mind back to the breath. And in this way, whatever happens outwardly, you remain centered inwardly, calm, peaceful, with equanimity. The third approach is to use wisdom or wise reflection, yoniso manasikara, as a way to deal with the crisis brought on by the virus. And so with wise reflection, we consider that the virus is something of a teacher, teaching us the real nature of life. Usually in our day-to-day life, we always continue our activities on the tacit assumption that everything will go on normally without any disruption. We think we're always safe and secure. But what the Buddha teaches is that underneath the peaceful surface of our everyday life, there are always dangers hiding in the background. And so now with the virus, these dangers have come out from hiding into the open. And so some of the themes that the Buddha teaches his disciples for daily reflection is to reflect, I am subject to old age. I have not escaped from old age. I am subject to illness. I have not escaped illness. I am subject to death. I have not escaped death. So we've picked up this physical body at our birth. We've come into this world, and having a body living in this world, we are subject to aging, subject to illness, subject to death. And now, as this virus spreads, we are facing the realities, particularly of illness and the potential for death. And so we have to keep our minds strong, have to keep the mind prepared. A fourth topic that the Buddha teaches for reflection is that I must be parted and separated from everyone that I love. So even if we continue to live, if we don't die ourselves, our loved ones, our relatives, our friends are also subject to death. So they might pass away before we do. And if we are not inwardly prepared, then when they pass away, we become overcome by grief and by misery, even by depression. But if we consider this theme, reflect on this theme, when our loved ones fall ill and pass away, then of course we feel sorrow, but we can maintain our strength, our tranquility through that sorrow and come out stronger, ready to face the challenges of life. The fifth theme that the Buddha teaches is that when we pass away, all that we take with us when we move on to the next life is our karma, the legacy of our good deeds and our bad deeds. And so if we bring this theme to mind, we see that we should right now begin to perform good, wholesome deeds, especially by giving in charity to organizations that are helping to address the crisis of the virus, to medical organizations, healthcare organizations, food distribution centers, and so forth, that are helping people affected by the virus. And so we can choose whatever approach we prefer, the approach of faith and devotion, the approach of mindfulness and concentration, the approach of wisdom, of wise reflection, in order to keep our mind calm, tranquil, inwardly strong, able to face the crisis with courage. And when we have a calm, strong, courageous mind, that will boost the immune system so that we become less vulnerable to the virus if we're exposed to this. But I hope that everybody who listens to this recording will be safe and secure, be peaceful and happy, and that in no short time, in no long time, the medical profession will find the vaccine that can eliminate the virus, and so we can return to our everyday life. And so I want to end this little series of reflections by reciting some verses of blessing, calling upon the spiritual power of the three jewels to protect everybody who listens. So these are verses in the ancient Pali language, wishing that you all be free from illness, that you enjoy a long lifespan, and that by the blessings of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and with the protection of the deities, you'll all be safe and healthy. Sabityo vivajantu, sabarogo vinasatu, mate bhavatu antarayo, sukhi di gayuko bhava, bhavatu sabba mangalang, rakantu sabadevata, sabba buddhanu bhavena, sada soti bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabba mangalang, rakantu sabba devata, sabba dhammanu bhavena, sada soti bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabba mangalang, rakantu sabba devata, sabba sanganu bhavena, sada soti bhavantu te. Thank you for listening, and may you all be well. May you all be safe. May you all be healthy. And may we all come out from this crisis, from this epidemic, stronger, with a greater sense of personal responsibility for each other, with hearts full of loving kindness and compassion, determined to work to create a community, a society, a world in which everyone can flourish and realize their virtuous aspirations.